What's going on, everybody? My name is Nathan. You're watching yet another Salty Production set review for Tarkir Dragonstorm, which comes out on April 11th, 2025. In this video, we're going to be looking at all of the best cards in mono red for the Commander format. Now, the set is designed for standard, but there are some awesome Commander staples to be found within the set, and that's what we're going to go over today. Before we get into the set review, just like to ask if you enjoy this sort of content, leave a like on the video and subscribe to see more. And if you want to support the channel, check out my Patreon linked down below. Our first card here is Core Steel Cutter, which is a 2-mana artifact equipment that we're mostly playing for the flurry mechanic to create those 1/1 creatures with prowess. This is only the second time we have seen being able to create monk creature tokens with prowess. Previously, the only card that really had this in either red or Jeskai colors was Monastery Mentor, so it has been a hot minute since we've been able to make prowess tokens. Aligned Heart does deliver you more value over time, and of course this came in the Jeskai Precon, but Core Steel Cutter is a little bit cheaper and synergizes well with any commander that wants to be buffed and be given haste or evasion. So I actually included Core Steel Cutter in my Elsha Threefold Master deck tech, which will be linked down below if you want to check that out. And you could also run this in any sort of Voltron-y type of storm deck, such as Veyran Voice of Duality, which typically wants that trample and haste to be able to get through for a bunch of commander damage. Our second card is Redoubled Stormslinger. For 3 mana, we get a 3/3. Whenever this creature attacks, for each creature token you control that entered this turn, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of that token. At the beginning of the next end step, sacrifice those tokens, which resembles Delina Wildmage quite a bit. However, Redoubled Stormslinger does require you to have made the copy already, so I think this will go really well in all of your mobilized decks. Zurgo, of course, is going to care a lot about this card, and I really think you do need to care about the tokens being stacked at the beginning of the end step. Maybe you're running like a Zulaport Cutthroat in order to drain your opponents on the way out, or you need to be manipulating the attack trigger in some way by maybe doubling it in a Nasheen deck, although I will say that you need to make the tokens before you attack, and typically Nasheen decks make tokens when the creatures actually attack and then the trigger goes on the stack. So Redoubled Stormslinger, a little bit niche. We definitely need to have some sort of build around in order to make those tokens before the creature attacks, but I definitely think this will mostly find its home in these Zurgo mobilized decks. Our next card here is actually a 2-for-1 with Parapet Thrasher and Thundermane Dragon, both of which are 4-mana dragons at 4 power. Parapet Thrasher will destroy target artifact, burn our opponents, and also give us some card advantage via an impulse draw, and Thundermane Dragon will be sort of a future sight effect for our dragon spells with power 4 or greater. So this is sort of the first time we've seen this much card advantage stapled onto 4-mana dragons, which is really nice. The closest comparison I could find, at least for the destroy target artifact effect, would be like an opportunistic dragon, which is going to lose all abilities of target human or artifact an opponent controls. So it's really nice that these are 4 mana and can fit into that sort of lower CMC slot. Like, for example, dragons and Lathless both want to run a lot of low-cost dragons in order to just spam them out onto the battlefield. And it's even better to be spamming out dragons that generate you more card advantage to really get that snowball effect going in your dragon deck. So if you are in either Lathless or Dragon, give both of these dragons a look. These are definitely high value. Our next card is Will of the Jeskai. For 4 mana, we get a sorcery. If we control a commander, we can choose both modes. We can wheel the table for 5 cards, or we can basically do a Past in Flames to give each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard flashback until end of turn. The problem with Will of the Jeskai, and the reason why I think it's the worst of the wheel cycle, is that the first mode, the wheel mode, actually gives out card advantage to our opponents. So if the whole table is sitting at 3 cards in their hand and you cast the first mode, we're actually going to give out 6 cards to our opponents, and we're only going to draw 2. Okay, so that's negative card advantage, not great. So that means we have to care about our graveyard, and I guess one could argue, well, if you have the second part of this mode, we're putting 5 cards into our graveyard to then use on that same turn. And the problem with this is that we've already cast 4 mana for this effect, so the question is, how much mana do we have remaining to really make use of those cards in our graveyard? And even in the late game, you generally cap out at 8 or 9 mana if you're not in a heavy ramp strategy by the end of the game. So even if we're assuming this is at the end of the game, we have 8 or 9 mana, that means we only have 4 or 5 mana to really utilize in order to, cast those spells out of our graveyard. So you'd really need to have some sort of ritual effect or big mana type of effect that you're pairing with Will of the Jeskai, or you really care about putting cards into your graveyard via a targeted sort of discard there. So I was thinking of Jeskai commanders that would be both stormy but generate a lot of mana. Kaikar Wind's Fury, I think, fits the bill because you can sacrifice those spirits to add a bunch of red to then use that mana all in one turn to storm off. And then Narset Enlightened Master could make use of this by giving the extra turn spells that we have in our graveyard flashback, although that's going to be a lot of mana because when Narset actually attacks and we get that attack trigger, once we cast those spells, because they have been cast, they go back into our graveyard for use later. So we could technically flashback like a Time Warp or something in order to use it again. But again, the problem is I think Will of the Jeskai, if it's going to wheel the whole table, needs to be maybe one less mana. I think this honestly could have been, 3 mana and been fine and been on the same level as the rest of the will cycle. So I'm not super high on Will of the Jeskai, but wanted to mention it because maybe you guys have a deck out there that this could perfectly slot into. Then our next card is Magmatic Hellkite, which is going to enter and destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls, and its controller may search for library for a basic land card, but it enters with a stun counter on it, which is absolutely huge. This is the second time we've seen a destroy target non-basic land on a dragon, the previous being Obsidian Charma, but that doesn't actually give its opponent a basic, so the effect more resembles a demolition field type of effect. And again, I really like Magmatic Hellkite in any sort of dragon deck because non-basic lands just need to be dealt with in Commander. Gaia's Cradles, Field of the Dead, Nykthos, Three Tree City, Cabal Coffers, all of these lands are running around in the format and they definitely need to be dealt with. And with the limited number of basics that people tend to run at higher power, there is a non-zero chance that your opponent might actually not have a basic to search up for this effect. But really what you're going to be doing with this card is pretty degenerate stuff. You're going to be running it in Mirim, and you're going to be cloning it to just get as many copies of that ETB as you can so that you can just force a bunch of tempo disadvantage onto your opponents. So that's going to be pretty much where this is going to be the most broken, is in a Mirim deck. Then our next card is Goldlust Triad, another banger of a dragon here. 5-mana 4/3 with flying and myriad. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. Personally, I think this is the best dragon in the whole set, at least in mono red. Because could you imagine using this in an Obiga deck to then end the turn and keep those myriad tokens? My goodness, is this insane. Or if you're just doubling your tokens or running this in any sort of token matters deck, this is going to net you a ton of mana, and it's going to be very hard to block being a 4/3 flyer with Myriad. I really, really like Goldlust Triad, and I really like dragons in general that power you out for mana advantage so that you can cast more dragons later on. So, of course, you can consider this in your typical dragon decks. I like this in Magda because it does synergize with treasures, and also Mirim because if we get a second copy of Goldlust Triad, that's going to be a ton of Myriad tokens and a ton of mana advantage. Going to be absolutely sick in Mirim. And while we're talking about dragon decks eating good, let's talk about Stormscale Scion, a 6-mana 4/4 with flyer. Other dragons you control get +1/+1, and it has Storm. Now, I don't think that you'll be copying this creature a lot. I actually don't think this card is that good, but I like noting it because it's actually the first time we have seen a Lord effect on a dragon that actually gives the toughness portion boost as well. So Crucible of Fire is a previous effect where dragon creatures you control get +3/+3 on an enchantment, and if we look to the Rakdos colors, we do have a +1/+0 with Kolagon. So Stormscale Scion, first time we've seen a Lord effect, and you could possibly have a giant mana geyser to then storm off with Stormscale Scion, but generally I think the max amount of tokens you'll make with this is probably 1, just given that it's already 6 mana, but if you are synergizing it with our next card that we will discuss, then it is even better, which is Dracogenesis. For 8 mana we get an enchantment. You may cast dragon spells without paying their mana costs, which is basically going to be a Rooftop Storm. I mean, imagine casting that Stormscale Scion for free after you've just dumped the rest of your hand on the battlefield. My goodness, is this absolutely amazing. But the problem with Dracogenesis, again, is that it is 8 mana. Now, dragons generally are more expensive, but you're going to have to generate the mana to get here with something like a Mana Geyser. Now, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, like 100% honest here, I don't know if Dragogenesis would make the cut in an Dragon deck, for example, because 8 mana is just so much mana to pay in 2025 Commander. Rooftop Storm tends to work in zombie decks because it is at the upper echelon of the mana curve if you are not ramping. Generally, you can get that out by, turn 5 through turn 7. So Dragogenesis, while dragons do cost more and you can get more mana advantage by casting the Dragogenesis, it is offset by the fact that it just costs more mana to cast. So again, you're going to need some sort of mana geyser to get to Dragogenesis, or your suite of dragons that you're running in your dragon deck have to be heavy mana producers, such as the Goldlust Triad that we discussed earlier. So definitely give Dragogenesis a look. I have a feeling this card is going to be really expensive just because of the dragon tax that everybody kind of has to pay, being the most popular tribe out there. But at 8 mana, it's a little awkward to cast, sitting at the way high end of the mana curve. So you got some pros and cons here with Dragogenesis. And that brings us to our honorable mentions. So our first honorable mention today is Infantry Shield, which is going to cost us 3 mana, but it's also going to equip for 2 for a total of 5 mana. Equip creatures menace and mobilize X for X as power. The problem with this card is that while you can pay the 5 mana in installments, generally if we pay 5 mana to create tokens, we want to be making at least 5 tokens off of that. So I'm using Increasing Devotion as my comparison point here. And also I believe red also follows that similar rate with the 2 mana make 2/1/1 goblins, which we'll have on screen, and then also the 3 mana make 3/1/1 goblins. I believe there's a card that does that as well. So if you are running a commander that has at least 5 power, I would give this a look. Maybe you can even run it for 4 power if you assume that maybe we'll get more value off of this over time. But I think that you also need to care about those tokens being sacked at the beginning of the next end step. So if you're running, again, like a Zulaport Cutthroat in any sort of warrior deck, this could maybe be an option for you. But again, it's just a little bit awkward. I really would like to get at least 5 tokens off of this, especially considering the fact that they don't stick around. So if you're not making use of the death trigger, then this is, in my personal opinion, strictly worse than something like an Increasing Devotion. Our next honorable mention is Caldera Pyrma. 5 mana, 3/3 flyer. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, put a 1/1 counter on this creature, then this creature deals damage equal to its power to target opponent, which is a little bit disappointing to see. The problem with Caldera Pyrma is that while it does, it's a little bit cheaper than a instant sorcery payoff like Rite of the Dragon Caller. It only deals damage to target opponent, and these decks that tend to want to spam out a bunch of instant and sorcery cantrips already are very, very pressured for the payoffs for doing so. So I think just burning target opponent is not that good of a payoff. I'd much rather run Rite of the Dragon Caller, which is going to create a ton more power and toughness on the battlefield to utilize over and over. Instead, Caldera Pyrma, while it will get kind of massive, is also just sort of a single target removal. It's going to have a target on its back because it's going to both grow massively and going to be dealing a bunch of damage to one opponent in particular. So I don't know. I don't think this would really make the cut. I think this honestly is more of a limited bomb, and I just don't know if it would make the cut in Commander. And that is our final honorable mention, which means we can cover our top 3 red cards from Tarkir Dragonstorm. And if we could get a drum roll, please, we have Parapet Thrasher, Thundermane Dragon, and Goldlust Triad. Mono red dragons eating so well in the set. Parapet Thrasher and Thundermane Dragon are going to be generating a card advantage. Parapet Thrasher also is a removal spell for artifacts. Goldlust Triad is going to be mana advantage. All of these things are what you want to be running in a mid-range commander deck, and so all of these dragons are going to be windmill slams into your Dragon decks, and I'm assuming they're going to be relatively expensive because everybody has a dragon deck and everybody wants to be running these dragons. So get your wallet ready for a beating here because it's about to go through the ringer. So that is my red set review for Tarkir Dragonstorm. If you guys enjoyed the video, leave a like on it and subscribe to see more. And if you want to support me and my channel, you can check out my Patreon link down below as well. And if you want to see all of my other set reviews, you can check those out on screen now.